Reckless 2.0. Here with Vickiss and D-Train. Are you there?
Yes, sir.
Oh, there you are. How are you doing this evening, sir?
Intensely victimized, but still pressing on. So, how are you?
Extremely victimized, but still holding strong, or attempting to.
For sure, for sure.
Yep.
Is my background noise straight now? Or...
I mean, there's a little, but, it's not too bad. You're good.
Okay.
And if the background noise is too much for the listeners, just let us know if you would like to call in. The number is 1-917-889-2965. That is 1-917-889-2965. So, I guess, D-Train, did you want to go into do the descriptor for today's program, or today's guest?
Sure. Today's program, we will be having Ms Marilyn Vann. She is a black female. She is the president of the descendants of freedmen for the 5 civilized tribes. Very interesting verbiage. I know it's not hers, though. I know that white people are responsible for that verbiage of civilized tribes. But we're going to be discussing the Cherokee Supreme Court's decision to boot black people from their ranks. So should be an interesting program. Yeah.
Did you want to contact Ms. Vaughn?
Yes, sir.
All right.
1 second.
This is Marilyn.
Yes. Oh. Good evening. This is Dee from Reckless. How are you doing this evening?
Just fine. How are you?
Doing as well as I can.
Yes, and I am his co-host, Vickiss. Hello.
Yes.
Yes. I guess D-Train, did you want to go in?
Sure. Ms. Vann, if you had anything, we gave you, your title of the president of the Freedmen for the 5 civilized tribes. If you had anything else, background related, that you think is pertinent, that you want to share with the audience, you can go ahead, and then we can get rolling.
Well, I'm the president of the Descendants of Freedmen of the 5 Civilized Tribes Association, a nonprofit. I'm also the lead plaintiff in a federal lawsuit, Vann et al. Versus Kempthorne, which is, I guess now it's Salazar, which deals with the rights of the freedmen people, and that's, and I think that's pretty important. There's also we also have a 501c3 African Indians Foundation that has it's not a membership organization, but we use that a lot to get some of our tax deductible donations for legal fees. But those are some of the I guess that, you're talking about titles, things like that. I guess that kind of wraps it up a little bit.
Yes, ma'am. And again, the site is www.freed, F-R-E-E-D, men, M-E-N, number 5, tribes.com. That is www.freedmen, number 5, tribes.com. You can read about the black freedmen, descendants of the Choctaw, Cherokee, Seminole Creek, and missing one tribe.
Creek, Chickasaw. Did you say?
There you go, Chickasaw.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
But those are the 5 what we're called the civilized tribes because they enslaved black people. That's why they were called civilized by the U.S. government.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, man. I guess, rolling off of that, I would ask you, you are a black female, correct?
Yes, that's correct. I am.
Here on Reckless 2.0, we've unfortunately surmised that we are in a global system of white supremacy, and we define that as a system of imbalance of power, maintained, established, refined, and expanded by people who classify themselves as white in all areas of human activity. Do you believe that such a system exists?
Oh, I definitely believe that there is a system like that, yes. And a lot of people think that racism is gone, discrimination is gone, because the Jim Crow laws are gone. There's a black man in the presidency, but racism is alive and thriving in many areas because there is racism, because racism and discrimination is profitable. And just as it was in the days of when there was chattel slavery, again, these economic factors come into effect, and they're still coming into effect, but some people just don't see them.
For sure. Vic, did you have any questions?
Yes, I guess it would just be a general... I guess, would you mind going into the 2007 amendment that initially required Cherokee blood to be a member of the tribe of the Cherokee Nation?
Yes, I can go into that some. The tribe, Principal Chief Chad Smith is a person who is very opposed to the Freedmen people having tribal membership, and he led a campaign going from city to city, talking about the Freedmen being non-Indians who were forced on the tribe, and the treaty was forced on the tribe. The Treaty of 1866, which came about when the tribe had joined the South during the Confederacy, largely in order to keep black people as chattel slaves. The treaty was signed. The tribe had already ended slavery in 1863, but in 1866, this treaty agreement with the federal government required the tribe, and the tribe agreed that all of the blacks in the tribe who were not already citizens would have permanent citizenship in the tribe, including the right to hold office, voting, other things, just like any other legal citizen. But again, people forgotten, don't know that much about the tribe. The tribe in modern times is the vast majority of the people are completely Caucasian-looking. They've lived lives of white privilege. Yes, legally they are Indians because they're members of a federally recognized tribe, but a majority of them feel that they're better than people of African descent. So as I said, this big campaign went out. Some of the people who supported the chief on the tribal council also participated in this. Not that many people in the tribe voted. A very small percentage of people voted. But it was enough that the blacks, the Freedmen people, were voted out of the tribe, and the tribe had to push back on that because, we have federal lawsuits going on to protect the Freedmen rights. There was also some pressure coming in from Washington, D.C., some people like Congresswoman Diane Watson, very involved in supporting the Freedmen. Congressman Barney Frank is a person who very outspoken on behalf of the Freedmen, but the tribe had to back off. But as I said, there were a lot of secret meetings tribal resources being used to lay out, to frighten people. Just like in the old Jim Crow days, there were anonymous letters, postcards that went out saying this person and that person running for office was the freedman's friend, and they would be signed by Cherokee Indians by blood or other anonymous sort of things. Like in the days of the Klan, I guess, kind of like Klan calling cards. The only difference, of course, is that nobody is being killed. And I don't think anybody's really in danger of being killed, because unlike the days when they burned down, when Black Tulsa was burned down in the 1921 race riot, and a lot of people are not aware that most of those black people were Cherokee and Creek freedmen, people who the source of their wealth was their tribal membership, because they had received land allotments as members of the tribe when the tribal lands were divided. And so people were getting oil and gas and grazing revenue from their allotment, and you didn't have sharecroppers in eastern and southern Oklahoma, unlike Mississippi or Alabama at that point in time. As I said, because the federal government won't allow, those kind of violent things, but instead of violence, you have something else that comes into play: money, the tribal gaming money, which is non-taxed under federal law, which the tribes really don't have to, the tribal leadership really don't have to explain or account for. A lot of that money goes into Washington politicians. And it's not just in the hands of white ones, some of the black ones too. And some people don't want to make investigations. Some do not want to shut their eyes to what's happening to these black people. And I think it's a crying shame. But that is the system that we live in, pay-for-play politics, to where, justice has little worth because money is being made again off the blacks of black people. It's just that these blacks are not enslaved, but lobbyists, lawyers, politicians, people in academia. I have had speaking engagements that I have been disinvited from speaking on, and why? I have no doubt in my mind, although I don't actually have a piece of paper, that a fact check was handed to this one or that one, a president of a college or something, to keep this topic away from these young minds.
Very, very unfortunate. But typical tacky tactics that we've certainly seen, we see every single day. I guess I would follow up and ask, you said that many of them look like, many of the people who voted and hold these secret Klan-like meetings, many of them look like they are white and consider themselves better than black people. And I guess I would just ask, would it be accurate to say that these are white people?
Well, yeah, their birth certificates say that they're white. I'll give you an example. Former Congressman Brad Carson from Oklahoma, he served in Congress about 6 years. If you pull up his picture on the Internet, you'll see a completely white-skinned, blue-eyed, blonde person. And I want to make it clear, I don't have the problem with the appearance of any member of any Indian tribe. I really do not. But I guess what I'm saying is that 90% of the people in this tribe have lived lives of white privilege. Their birth certificates say that they're white. They've never suffered any kind of discrimination because they have Indian ancestry. Even their grandfathers probably couldn't speak Cherokee language. But as I said, but based on federal law, the people are legally members of a federally recognized tribe. But as I said, unfortunately, because of the media stereotypes out there, And also Oklahoma's Jim Crow past, where persons who had no African descent were legally white, were not subject to Jim Crow laws. A large percentage of these people think that they're vastly superior socially and in every other way to people of African blood. There's just no doubt about it. And I think I would imagine that you folks, being media folks, know that the media has went out here and has made large sums of money off of stereotyping, black people. I'm not saying that there are not some black folk that need to get their act together better, but it's clear to me that any misdeed, by a person, a black person, gets highlighted, brought to light, is focused on, and others people's misdeeds are not focused on as much. To me, that is my perception. I don't know about you folks there, but I've talked to others, and I'm not the only person who sees that.
Absolutely. And just to note, the list of people, Cherokees by blood you sent me, I just Google imaged all of them, and 5 of them, you gave me 6 names, 5 of them look like, clearly these are white people. Councilwoman Watts looks like, she could be non-white. So very interesting. I find that, this mistreatment, and, I've had a theory that some of the Native American tribes have been infiltrated by people who function not only as white, but as racist white supremacists, and, continue to dominate and subjugate people who they classify as not white.
Well, and that's true. Until there started to become money and being a member of the tribe or some economic opportunities, a lot of these people didn't want anything to do with the tribe at all. And I've talked to, some elderly full-blood people who told me that, 30 years ago, some of the people walking around that have big jobs or big contracts with the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma would really look down on a person who was more stereotypically Indian. And again, there's very few of these people relatively, but they would call them the N-word. People that they knew had no African blood, but it's just kind of like, you're just this far below us here, But but yes, and that is one of the secrets that a lot of people don't know about. Another thing is, as I said, the vast majority of the people, say in the Cherokee Nation, the Chickasaw Nation, some of these other former slaveholder tribes, they want to put out a persona. They don't want the average American to really realize this. So when they have some certain, the Cherokee Chief Chad Smith, he had even other tribal leaders had commented that sometimes when he would show pictures supposedly of Cherokee Nation citizens, he would be showing pictures of people of other tribes. Even politicians in Washington, D.C. have commented on that. Also, even things like the Miss Cherokee contest, which requires people to have a quarter Indian blood, a young woman, not to have been married, no children, this and that and the other. Very few young women can actually meet those qualifications. The last 2 or 3 years, they've had like 3 or 4 young women who've applied for the position. And, you get some scholarships and different things like this. Part of it is just finding people who look the part that they want to put out there. And it's not a matter and there are other tribes. You take the Comanche, the Kiowas, who captured white people, white captives. I know there's been some stories, about people like, I think it was somebody named Quanah Parker. His mother was a captured white woman or something, a Comanche Indian, and this man became a chief. Well, those tribes that captured white people, and these white people were put on separate allotment rolls by the federal government. And again, members of their tribe, they haven't been put out, but the tribes where you have small percentages of people that clearly have African blood, they need to go because they're non-Indians. But it's not bad for a tribe to have white people in the tribe. I mean, people who are completely Caucasian-looking, and they have no Indian ancestry at all. And they are completely Caucasian. You understand what I'm saying? But that's where we are.
Yes, ma'am. I've noticed this phenomenon all across the Americas with so-called Native Americans from South America to Central America to Nevada. I've even noticed that the darker Native Americans, white people, will call niggers.
Well, that's exactly what I was saying. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting. I would ask you, have the quote-unquote full-blood elders, do they mistreat you like these other not full-blood Cherokees?
Well, there's some that, feel that the tribe should only have people who have large degrees of Indian blood, people who are full-bloods or close to it. But I would say that, there's better acceptance among the people who are full-bloods or close to it than people who have very, very small amounts, or people who are, completely Caucasian-looking. There's not completely acceptance, no, among full-bloods or close to full-bloods. But as I said, I would say there's a higher percentage, yes, but not across the board.
For sure. What I've observed, too. Vic, did you have any questions?
I would just, just a comment, just that I do just see the pattern of deception. It seems to me that it's essentially just white people just taking financial advantage, and just white people essentially taking people's identities and just using it to their advantages, and just using deception and practicing racism, white supremacy, of course, through the process. And you see this just worldwide. You see it even in the places in the world known as Israel, with white Jews, and then an Ethiopian Jew comes through as a so-called refugee, and these people are extremely mistreated, even though technically they're supposed to be part of the same tribe, ethnicity, culture, et cetera, religion. But these people who are classified as white in many parts of the world, not just in Israel, are mistreating those who are mistreating those that historically were originally the people. So I just see that, and I guess I would ask, do you see this type of mistreatment towards people who are more quote unquote full blood Native tribe members, as opposed to white ones? Do you see any mistreatment from the white ones towards the ones who are more full blood, other than just the inward? Do you mind expanding on that?
Yes. If you look at the people who have the best jobs, so far as the high-paid positions and things like that, you'll pretty much across the board see that these are people who are completely Caucasian-looking, and people have told me that are close to full-bloods that there's discrimination, even though they may be the better qualified person, that they don't get the job, and that Chief Smith, would really has even made public statements that he'd prefer not to hire full bloods or people close to full bloods for positions, and I personally have not heard this statement myself, but people have reported this statement to me, and I think that is appalling, and that any tribal leader would take such a position. But yes, I think, as I said, this is my understanding, and as I said, just looking, if you, for instance, look at Cherokee Nation businesses, the board of directors, and those kinds of positions, you don't see, full-blood looking people, on those positions. I have heard some rumors, and again, I cannot qualify this, that some people that are friends of the principal chief have been made members of the tribe and given certificate of Indian blood cards, those sort of things, that are completely white people, and but they wanted them to have these positions. Again, I have no proof of that, but I have been told by people who have been longtime members of the tribe living in those communities that those families were not Indian families. So, as I said, there is some tension between people who are more full-blood, who generally live, more in the tribal areas, kind of like the heart of the Cherokee Nation, and some of the other people who, grew up further away, that, have more lived lives of white privilege. But yes, and some of the people who told me about some of the discrimination, I don't think that they have lied to me about it.
I certainly don't think they have lied either. D-Train?
Oh, sorry, had my line muted. I guess I wanted to go into your myths page because I saw one myth that just kind of made me chuckle. I guess if people want to read along, it's freedmen5tribes.com/myths.htm. You can just click the myths link in the page. Anyway, number one, the first myth. Freedmen are only after money and benefits and don't want to build up the tribal culture. I guess, could you explain, how leaders of the tribe have insinuated that, or even, flat out suggested it?
Okay. When they have a press conference, they will say that the freedmen, or they talk to reporters. There was I was talking to a reporter earlier this week, and he said that this one member of the tribal council, a lady who is one of the Chief Smith's, strongest supporters, complained that the freedmen, are not interested in participating with the tribe and the culture. And I had been out to a community meeting in that lady's area a few years ago, and she said, well, why haven't you freedmen been out here before? Well, number one, did this person, as a tribal council person, go into the freedmen community and invite people, tell people when the meeting was, and that sort of thing like this, or any kind of events going on, to be sure that people knew and that they could participate. And also another thing I want to say, very few people in this tribe participate in any kind of culture. There's only been one chief in the past 50 years, or 100 years maybe even, who, and for a long time there were appointed chiefs, who was a Cherokee speaker. I mean, Chief Chad Smith is not a Cherokee speaker. Neither was Chief Mankiller, another person who was an opponent of the freedmen. Ross Swimmer, who was appointed by Reagan to head the Bureau of Indian Affairs, a very racist man. None of these people are Cherokee speakers. But then if you go to the language classes, you see a handful of people. If you, tribal council meetings, you see a handful of people. unless it's something that's a real hot-button issue, there was, you may see some more people there. But if they have a community meeting, if a tribal councilman puts on a community meeting about, election law or something, unless there's a bunch of food that is that's out there, and the people aren't fed until after the meeting, you only see you'll see just you'll see just a very few people. I mean, that's the way it is. As I said, apathy. The fact that out of a tribe of 300,000 people, you have this last election 15,000 people who voted, and that's the biggest that there's ever been. So as I said, you don't have an interest. You don't have a nationwide interest in language or culture. And for, people like this woman, Kara Cowan Watts, to stand up and say, well, the Freedmen aren't into the culture, and this and that and the other. It's just appalling. And I have been told that this person, until they decided to run for office, had never had any interest in the tribe. But I guess, getting a position on the tribal council where maybe you can collect a good salary and don't have to work real hard, well, goshly, now I'm putting on my Indian hat. Again, you have, so as I said, that is and so far as services, the services for the tribe are mostly for people who are relatively low income and live in the tribal service area. I'm not going to say there are not some people who are freedmen who, their main concern is services. But I can say that for other people. And part of the thing is that, the tribe did not start, there were not a lot of people interested in registering in the tribe when the tribe had minimal services, or worse services than now. And so, to lay that on the freedmen, again, is disingenuous. As I said, you can go, go to a community meeting out there in this lady, for instance, in this person's own community, and just see, well, if there's supposed to be X thousands of people in Rogers County, Oklahoma, that are Cherokee citizens, why, if there's some event, do you just have these few people come out?
Again, Ms Marilyn Vann, just putting on your Cherokee hat, it's just a tired tactic and practice of white people to do this for financial gain. One white person who is notorious for that is Iron Eyes Cody. If the audience knows that, Iron Eyes Cody is the person. If you remember the commercial with the Native American person, the so-called Native American person, where they throw the trash. White people are driving by, throw trash down, and the person the Indian cries, and everybody's supposed to feel, oh, let me just pick up some trash. When really, the person who played that was a white person, and it's just essentially white people playing games, and it's quite sad that even within people, the so-called non-white specific group, it's still ran by and taken advantage of by white people.
Well, that's true. Like you said, this Iron Eyes Cody, he was, he was not associated with any sort of a tribe. That was confirmed after he died. I don't remember seeing him, anything that he was on. I know there's a lot of old movies and things on TV that run, but, but the majority of people who have profited by the tribal gaming, by these opportunities, are white people or people who, again, have very minimal amounts of Indian ancestry, who, as I said, have lived lives of white privilege, but now, as I said, that there are management contracts dealing with tribes. There are legal contracts. There are extremely well-paid tribal jobs. If you are can be associated with the ruling elite, then, as I said, but very few people of African descent have benefited at all from, this economic growth. Just very, very few. And I think that's very much a shame. And, you have your tribal leaders who, I think part of that is that they have wanted to milk some white guilt to gain more money. When you go up to Washington and you ask for increased money, which doesn't necessarily get spent where it needs to be spent, and you talk about the Trail of Tears and things like this, you have you have some sympathy there. But if it was to come out, if there was a lot of play that, well, wait a second here, not only do these so-called Indians, and again, the people legally are Indians. Their ancestors enslaved black people, had black codes, which made it illegal for blacks to learn to read and write prior to the Civil War. Tribal council would expend money to hunt down escaping black people as slaves. That this kind of a terrible history is out there, but that the tribal leadership, expends millions of dollars to root out the black side of the tribe, keep the blacks out, puts on media campaigns, to try to justify this or to say, well, these are the great things we're doing, or money going to lawyers and lobbyists to try to extinguish the freedmen people's rights and keep people in Washington from asking for investigations or looking too hard. So as I said, very few blacks have, made any money off of the economic gains. But yet, back on that Trail of Tears, the people who did the hard, dirty work were the blacks, who carried the baggage, who at night, when other people sat down, they had to chop firewood, they had to make fires, they had to cook, they had to continue to do some dirty work before they could sit down and rest after walking all day. Some may be chained to the wagons to keep them from running off. But as I said, you don't see that in these movies that are made or these documentaries. The story of the suffering blacks, the blacks who are entitled by law to the same rights as others in the tribes. And for some people who say, well, we still don't understand, all societies that have enslaved or colonialized people have eventually incorporated them into their society to some extent. Some, maybe, it's been more difficult than others. But after the Civil War, the blacks in the South, were legally given freedom, the right to vote, citizenship, certainly the responsibilities of citizenship, because when the wars came, who was the first to be brought out there to be cannon fodder? It was the blacks. So going to war is a duty of citizenship. But the blacks and the tribes, such as the Cherokee Nation or the Creek Nation, after the Civil War, were not entitled to U.S. citizenship because they were not, they had not been enslaved or lived in the United States. At that time, these Indian nations, they had their own military forces. They controlled the law on the reservations. They could execute people, things that the tribes can't do now because a lot of the sovereignty the U.S. government has taken away or regulates. But just as the blacks who were living in Mexico received Mexican citizenship, or Rome after they ended slavery, those slaves, those freedmen became Roman citizens. Some of them became very powerful men eventually. But that's the way it is in all societies. And that's why everybody thought it was so heinous when South Africa took away the South African citizenship of the blacks in 1975. You had people marching, very upset. But because you have tribal leaders who can fork over large sums of money to members of Congress, to senators, political parties, what happens with the Freedmen? As I said, a lot of people, they don't want to interfere. They don't want to speak out because they don't want that casino dollar to dry up. But that is life in the United States in 2011.
Yes, ma'am, certainly. I guess I'd ask how the proceedings are going to keep you guys in the tribe. This is something that's been elevated to the United States Supreme Court. Is that what's going on?
No, not the U.S. Supreme Court. The options in the tribal court are finished. As I said, we've had some ongoing litigation in the federal court, which actually started before anything, was going on with the tribal court. So far, we are winning. We have a injunction request that was filed last Friday that will be argued on September the 20th in Washington, D.C., where we're asking the federal judge to reverse this tribal court's action of disenrolling the Freedmen people. I think we feel pretty good that the judge will do this and protect the black freedmen. But of course, the situation is difficult for us because the tribe, they can discriminate against us using the monies and the power of the tribe. They can, those casino dollars, they can be used to hire, outside lawyers. The Justice Department gives tribes grants to hire lawyers for the tribal government. People like Mr. Smith, the Chief Smith, have been able to run a genocidal war, and I guess I should say maybe a paper genocide, because they're not actually they're not actually using guns and knives against people or artillery, but they have been able to carry out this campaign without any personal cost to themselves, whereas the Freedmen people, we are regular folks. We are, myself, I'm a janitor's daughter. Yes, I have a professional job, but I don't come from a family of great wealth. Most people of African descent in this society are not wealthy people. They don't come from generations of wealth because, black people in this society have had few opportunities to gain wealth and pass it along for generations. A lot of the freedmen are, you're talking about, maybe, disabled veterans, deacons, ministers' widows, whatever. Good and decent people, law-abiding people, that I would think that any entity, government, would think would be fine, upstanding citizens to have. But unfortunately, as I said, we are having to fight, as I said, and raise our own money for our attorneys. And these kind of civil rights cases that go on for several years, they take a lot of time to prepare briefs, a lot of legal time. And we're blessed that, we have had attorneys who have been willing to work for us for not a arm and a leg, but, still money has to be raised for people. I mean, freedom is not free, as the NAACP state president, Mr. Milton, always used to say when he, and that is really the truth. I mean, it's similar to the days of when Honorable Dr. King was marching for freedom, and the George Wallace and the state governors, the sheriffs, would use the monies and the power of the state of Alabama against black ministers and children, students, and the black people had to, come up with their own lawyer fees or bail money or whatever in order to fight for the constitutional rights that they already had to be enforced. So do the freedmen people. We're having to do the same thing.
Yes, ma'am. Vic, did you want to go ahead?
Just a question in regards to the media coverage of these proceedings. Do you believe? I noticed I guess I would ask. Do you think that because, like you said earlier, it's kind of a secret that most of these people making these decisions are white people? And do you think? Do you see any type of deception trying to perhaps present the image or present the image that there is conflict between non-black, non-white people and black people? Essentially saying there's a headline saying that the Cherokee Nation is charged with racism, and immediately a person would think, the Cherokee Nation, they are going to think a person who looks like a white person. So do you think that in the media it is essentially attempting to pit black people against other non-white people?
Well, I think that the media, the media, they want to cover tension. I think there's no doubt about it. It's, that's a good storyline. And I know, one time I had a white reporter that I called, and this was before a big tribal council meeting regarding the Freedmen a few years ago. And I asked him, I said, well, I think it might be a good story if you came to Tahlequah. So he said, well, is there going to be people, tearing up the council house and throwing chairs and breaking windows and things? And I said, no. I said, those are not the kinds of things that are going to be going on there. I said, I don't know that there's really going to be shouting. I said, there may be one person raising their voice on the council or something like this, but this council person I mentioned earlier sometimes raises their voice when they're talking to other people, but there wasn't going to be any violence. Well, the person didn't come, but they did watch the proceedings on the video where the tribe sometimes records the council meetings and things. I think that the media, I think that they've tried to pit it. I think that some of them have not really looked that much at the issue, and some of the media, I think, have just kind of taken the tribe's byline and kind of ran with it. Kind of like you see Cherokee tribe boots out non-Indians or something, and kind of like. You get the idea if you don't know anything. Well, these are just some black people that squatted, on the tribe's lands, or some people that somehow illegally got, started using some services or something like this. And but the history of the Freedmen and the Freedmen's, are the things that we've done to keep the tribe alive. Stories about the Freedmen people who served on the tribal council and things like this. As I said, it's but I guess the thing is, it sounds more dramatic that way when you try to pitch it as a battle of, Indian tribe is trying to stop invasion of blacks or something like this. Sometimes, you can, sometimes they'll show a picture of a person like the tribal prosecutor that you can see is a completely white-looking woman, but not all the time. And then another thing, some of the media, because advertising dollars are very much down, they are, they feel it's to their advantage to more play the tribe side. Some of the newspapers that a few years ago were running a lot of features on the Freedmen, individual stories about Freedmen families or whatever, those kinds of things, disappeared. Those reporters that were, writing those stories were kind of moved on out of the picture, and some of the editorials started becoming much more hostile. And but at the same time, you kind of look and, maybe the tribe's advertising has started going up in those newspapers, the amount of advertising. And, and of course, newspaper people are business people. I'm sure that some of them, if they were cornered, would say, well, we're not here to, we're here to make money. We're not here to put the news in front of people. And, but, there's really not that much that can be done about that, because that is the kind of economy that we have. And as I said, the dollars that are being poured into the media by, some of the tribal leaders like Chief Smith, in order to influence the media. We've had some, there's some places where, for instance, sometimes we've had some public service announcements that went out about meetings, and some of the newspapers, eventually just kind of got to where either they never carried them anymore, or if they did, it was always the wrong date, the wrong time. They wouldn't put the city on of where the meeting is, and things that never used to happen. And it's kind of like, you kind of know what's going on there. That, and then, kind of like these, what is it, COINTELPRO? I've read about how the FBI people, how they would try to disrupt meetings of black civil rights people were having, or Indian activists who were, fighting against, corrupt government officials or the like, and where maybe a flyer that would, say put a meeting out at a certain time, all of a sudden those would disappear and there would be new flyers with the wrong place and that sort of thing like this. So as I said, you observe these kind of things that, never used to happen. And then, and then you think, well, it appears that, some of these media are getting direction, for this. And certainly a newspaper outlet or whatever, they don't have to carry your announcement, if you don't pay, them to run it. But as I said, you observe these kind of things, and so that there's still a lot of problems in this country for black people.
Yes, I would say there are a lot of problems on this planet for non-white people collectively as well.
Oh,
and
yes. No doubt about it.
I certainly actually see, other than it being, for financial gain and financially powered, I do see it as a strategic move by white people and a pattern by white people to pit two non-white groups together against each other, even though the perpetrator is obviously white. And I see an interesting parallel that with the recent comments by Mr. Cat Williams that the so-called media, which is owned by and controlled by white people, essentially trying to pit two groups of non-white people, so-called Mexicans against black people, making them look like making it look like there's this immense tension, and which there is, it's tight, a tight situation, on the slave ship. So of course there's going to be some tension, but I do see the parallel of look at these non-white people or these non-white groups, fighting with each other when it's really essentially white people who are instigating and really controlling who doesn't like who is white and who is not white, and it's quite deceptive. And I do see that with this the way that the media is portraying this incident, these trials, and with the comments by Cat, he's not racist, and this essentially trying to garner up some of kind of conflicting people and black non-people.
Well, this tactic of pitting non-white groups against each other actually started many years ago, and the Seminole tribe, which has some Freedmen tribal members who are being greatly discriminated against, at this time, and have been for quite some time. If it had not been for the blacks in the tribe would have been completely exterminated by the U.S. Army back, in the days of Andrew Jackson and before, because the people who really fought were the blacks, the Maroons, who were fighting under, black tribal leaders, men like Abraham and Cudjoe, who signed the treaties, who were signers to the treaties, and people like Andrew Jackson were saying that, it wasn't really an Indian war, it was a Negro war, and because the blacks would fight to the death in order to not be enslaved, and but as I said, current tribal leaders have either forgotten or they don't want to remember, about the blacks who fought in the swamps. They forget about the blacks who fought in the Indian Home Guards during the Civil War, when, you had factions in the tribes who some were fighting, the majority were fighting for the Confederacy, but you had some that were not. And the Confederates were, destroying the homes of some of the ones who were supporting the U.S. troops and that had that did not want to join the Confederacy. And you had the blacks, and fighting side by side with quote unquote Indians and the Home Guards. But that's been forgotten. That maybe today's freedman, maybe his great grandfather kept somebody's home from being destroyed, or the crops, or whatever. And so one of the tribal leaders, a former Seminole leader, about 10 years ago, was on 60 Minutes, Mr. Haney, Jerry Haney, and he said, well, he didn't care what the freedmen did, years ago. What are they doing for us now? That kind of attitude. Like as if, isn't citizenship supposed to be hereditary? Isn't it supposed to be by law? Why do you have to keep, do you have to be at the forefront of a war to save everybody year after year in order to remain in the tribe, to show your worth? Other people don't have to do that. Why just the blacks?
Totally agree.
So, as I said, people have profited. As I said, these, there's been bad appointments. Like I was saying, this President Reagan, his appointment of this man named Ross Swimmer, an almost completely white-looking Cherokee, to the head of the Bureau of Indian Affairs when Reagan was in office. He was a person who was committed to the destruction of the Freedmen people, you have, there's been other people who've been very poor appointments to, U.S. government positions, who've waged war against the Freedmen people. But
yes,
yeah, as I said, there's been profit. There's been profit in this discrimination, and as I said, and certainly, as I said, the whites have made their share of profit, all the way through.
Absolutely. Continued degradation of black people and using non-white people as a proxy to mistreat black people. I've noticed that, reading, pretty much everywhere on this planet. I wanted to ask you about the involvement of the Delaware tribe. And
yes.
They're stepping out to support the Cherokee Freedmen?
Yes, a band of Delaware was adopted into the Cherokee Nation during the late 1860s, and the Delaware chief was a person who was very outspoken in favor of the Freedmen, and their council made a resolution of support for the Freedmen. The Delawares are, a lot of them are good people. They were trying to separate from the Cherokee Nation over a multi-year period. The Cherokee Nation leadership spent millions of dollars citing the 1866 treaty, the same one that they say is null and void when it comes to the Freedmen, to keep the Delaware people in. And so, at any rate, the Delaware people eventually were able to separate again as a separate tribe, but it was at a very heavy cost, to them. And a lot of them support the Freedmen people and our treaty rights. And so, we're always grateful. We're always grateful for, anyone out there who wants the law to be followed, who's against racism, discrimination, for human rights. But, again, the Cherokee Nation leadership, a lot of money has been, put into Indian organizations in order to, make it easier for those organizations to, put out resolutions of support for the Cherokee Nation. Organizations that, such as the National Congress of American Indians, the Cherokee Nation, and several years ago, and had a very small investment into this organization. In recent years, it's been much, much more. And as I said, when you have hundreds of millions of dollars that you don't have to account for, you can go out and perpetrate a racist agenda like the Cherokee Nation has. And it's very unfortunate that but that's the society that we live in.
Unfortunately so. I guess I would ask, what would you say to? I'm going to play a little devil's advocate. What would you say to a person stating that the black people that are attempting that are members that are the members of the Freedmen tribe and are very vocal about their so-called Native American heritage, What would you say to a person who believes that is attempting to distance themselves from being black and essentially racially pie charting themselves to deny their blackness?
Well, once in a while, I've personally ran into a person like that, very, very few. But, this is what I say. This is the thing. A black person who's legally a French citizen, whose ancestors have been there 100 years, is a French citizen. A black person in Great Britain is a British citizen. If that's where him and his ancestors for umpteen generations live. Now, being a member of an Indian tribe is Indian tribes are political groups with certainly rights and certain obligations. The black people, the freedmen people who have legal rights, because our ancestors and ourselves have given to this society, that's our legal right. That's who we are. I don't see, you're not going to meet a freedman person who's going to say, I'm a full blood or I have no black ancestry. Even though some of the freedmen people, yes, they may look like what's a stereotypical full blood. There are freedmen people who look completely white. I mean, after all, black, quote unquote, is a legal term. A place like Oklahoma, where it said one person with one drop of African blood, there's that covers a lot of people that are legally Negroes based on the state law. That some might not want to say that or admit that, but a person fighting for their rights as a member of an Indian tribe, I don't see how that distances themselves away from being black. I mean, and this is another thing. All black people in this country don't have the same history. You're going to have some people like Mr. Obama that their parents came here, or they had a parent who came here, after the Brown decision. So, so a person who wasn't a slave, who settled in a place maybe where there really wasn't Jim Crow laws, who never saw a Jim Crow sign. You're going to have black people who, in this country, who are American citizens. That the things that they don't have a slave-based history, or even have a story from a parent or a grandparent who talked about a Jim Crow sign or being denied a service or something. You're going to have some people who are even later immigrants. People who've come from Africa or from the West Indies or wherever. They're going to have a different history. You're going to have some black people that their first language may be speaking Spanish or something like this. You also are going to have some black people who are going to have a tribal heritage, a tribal lineage. Either people talk about some white people. They criticize the Pequots. They say they're not really Indians. Well, why not? The people are members of a federally recognized tribe. They are descended from Indians. They have a tribal government. It's just that a lot of them, unlike a lot of the tribes in this country, the majority of people are not white-looking people. And for whatever reason, again, it's the racism that this country was built in. Accepting the fact that a person who clearly has African ancestry has some legal right, as a member of a tribe, or whether or not it is a tribal service or a payment based on a judgment fund from a land sale or whatever, where the tribe was underpaid, anything. Some people, it's a lot easier for them to accept a white-looking person than a person who has some African ancestry. And part of that, again, is the media. When they make movies and they show, they might show John Wayne or somebody back in, 1950 or 1960, and there would be some white woman who had a little bit of makeup on, and that was an Indian. Yes, really. I think a lot of the time, especially those historic movies, especially if there was some sort of a little romance between, this white male star, it really wasn't an Indian woman. It was a white woman with a little bit of makeup on, and they would give her some, stereotypical Indian-sounding name. And so, so white people especially have got this attitude of, well, that's what an Indian is supposed to look like. And, but why? Again, that's because the U.S. government discouraged Indian tribes from treating black people like others who had been captives or enslaved. Historically, Indian tribes, if they had a slave, there was no permanent chattel slavery. Usually that slave was eventually adopted into the tribe with full rights. And certainly there were some blacks early on that were adopted into tribes like the Cherokee Nation like that. But eventually, because white people were, carrying black people off, in these treaties that were being signed prior to the Civil War, the tribes were agreeing that they would turn over black escaped slaves to whites, to the the state governments surrounding them or whatever. It was just too much trouble to have too many black people as tribal members. And so, as I said, that's the way it is. So as time went on, in the majority of these tribes, if there was intermarriage, it was intermarriage with white people. As a matter of fact, the state of Oklahoma, when they passed the Jim Crow laws in 1907 and early 1908, when they defined a Negro as a person with one drop of African blood, all other people who had no black ancestry were legally white. Now, that didn't necessarily mean that you were going to be treated the same as a white person, but so far as being able to legally attend the white universities, that sort of thing, you could do it.
Oh, absolutely.
Double whammy.
Yes, double whammy, and I just couldn't agree more. I just couldn't agree more. I just think it's just very important to point out that, like you said, that there are many different versions or variants of a black person, and that technically Indian and Native American aren't racial classifications. They're ethnicities, they're cultures, they're tribes, but they aren't a race. They aren't a black person. I think that it's just phenomenal that you pointed that out, and then it's essentially distancing yourself from blackness because you aren't speaking specifically about a person's racial classification, and just the fact that racial classifications are completely arbitrary and just a social construction. One drop of African blood, but technically everybody on this planet currently has a drop of African blood if every person is descended from Africans. So I just think that's a very, very astute assessment, and I agree.
Oh, certainly. And this concept, this Jim Crow concept, which, of course, again had a profit motive. If the way that they had, the slavery, all these people were black, one drop of African blood, chattel slavery, there was more profit because, you bought a few slaves and then and they made money for you, and all of a sudden you had a lot of slaves and they still made money, and there was no way out for them unless you were generous and you allowed the slave to, buy his way out, or maybe if they did some great heroic act, or maybe if that was your son or your grandson on your death, you might free your slave. I mean, those kinds of things did happen. But even going on after slavery ended, and this isn't so much with the tribes, but when you were the manufacturing economy and the sharecroppers, everything like this, the larger the underclass of people who, are going to have these menial jobs, who are going to be underpaid, who could be kidnapped and sent into coal mines to work, under dubious charges. And I just finished reading a book about this more or less 20th century slavery, about blacks would just be kidnapped going down the road and arrested for vagrancy, and a coal mine owner would pay their fine, and then the person would have to work it off for 3 years or 5 years or whatever. But as I said, the larger the number of people that you can put into this social class, underclass, the more profitable it was. And but as I said, many people, and we both agree, they have a different past. And you take, for instance, say your Pequot Indians. Those people who clearly have African descent, they're tribal leaders. There's other tribes up there on the northeast part of the United States that are federally recognized, where they have large percentages of people of African blood, and who are, I think tribal leaders. I think the Narragansetts, Shigacox. I may be mispronouncing that, but and I think part of that is because a lot of those tribes in the northeast were almost exterminated. The whites, either they passed laws against marrying with them, but and so they married with a lot of people of African ancestry, and but for somebody to say that those tribes are not real Indians, but on the other hand, they'll look at a tribe like your Chickasaw Nation or the like, and say, oh, that's an Indian tribe. Where, because people feel more comfortable with a blue-eyed blonde Indian, is ridiculous. That's not the law.
Absolutely. I just wanted to point out, excellent observation, how you pointed out sex with white people, so-called Native Americans having sex with white people was really jump-started the mistreatment of black people and how that was connected. I guess I wanted to ask you one question. Since you're from Oklahoma, have you ever heard of a gentleman named Neely Fuller Jr.?
Neely who, sir?
Neely Fuller Jr.?
No, I have not. Is that a member of a tribe here?
Not to my knowledge. He could be. I'd have to ask him. He's a gentleman, black male, that wrote a book called the United Independent Compensatory Code. It's a textbook for victims of white supremacy. I was just wondering, because he is from around those parts, and I didn't know maybe if you had heard of him.
No, I'm not acquainted with his name at all. No, sir.
Okay. Have you ever heard of Dr. Francis Cress Wellesley?
Dr. Francis who, sir?
Dr. Francis Cress Wellesley?
No, I have not. Is he a writer also?
She is actually a physician, writer, psychiatrist. She actually published the Cress theory of color confrontation. If you're white, all right. If you're brown, stick around. If you're yellow, you're mellow. If you're black, get back. She debated Professor William Shockley back in the 1970s. She's actually appeared like on Donahue and stuff with her theory of color confrontation. Just wondering.
No, I have not. Of course, I've heard of this Dr. Shockley before, and everything. And so I tell you, it takes all kinds to make a world, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Certainly. I guess at this moment we can go to the phone lines if any of the callers have any questions. I guess uh, caller at 8536. Your line is open. Did you have any questions or comments for our guest?
Oh, hey, good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, hi. I'm just listening. Got a bit of a sour stomach, so I really don't want to talk. But this is an interesting program, and all I can say is keep up the fight.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
You know, nothing is won without hard work and action, commitment. No doubt about it.
Agreed. Thank you for calling in. Caller at 7012. Your line is open. Did you have any questions?
Greetings. I did not have any questions, but thank you guys for the program, and thank you guests for sharing some of the time with us tonight.
Well, thank you. I hope that you learned something new tonight, or about racism and apartheid in the United States.
Oh yes. Caller, thank you for calling in. D-Train?
I actually did not have any more questions. I am going to send you. I'll send you an email. Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. She was on the Tony Brown show way before my time, in the 1970s. And I'll send you an email, and I'll send you a link in the email with her debate with Dr. William Shockley. I'm sure you'll get a kick out of it. Yeah, she had the suspected racist very flustered. I will say that.
Well, I'm looking forward to looking into that some more. But yes, it's I think when they have to come off of it, when they're confronted, these people, and they can't give their little pat statements. I think they don't know where to go, and I think some of them, I think a lot of these folks, they know that black people are really not inferior, but others, those that really believe it, they don't know what to do when they may not know what to do or how to handle it when they meet a black person that has it all together, and anything that they say can just be demolished. They don't know how to handle it.
They certainly don't. I guess I would ask if you would have any information about Native American tribes, not just the Cherokee, but Native American tribes that had people who would be classified as black as members before white people classified themselves as white, came to this area of the world and of course mistreated and set up the system of white supremacy in this area of the world. Do you have any information about black people, people from Africa setting up communities and sharing quote unquote culture and essentially living here and being here before white people?
No, I'm not acquainted with anything like that. As I said, I do know that there were some tribes that at this point in time, the majority of the tribal members, including the tribal leadership, are people of African blood, and again, I think most of those are in the northeast part of the United States. You have some tribes trying to get federal recognition, where I think you have a lot of people with African blood. I think those are, tribes up in Virginia. But, so far as tribes, and I would imagine that if there were certainly if there were blacks who came, here as explorers, traders, and set up agreements or treaties or whatever with Indian tribes on the East Coast. Most likely, those communities were destroyed by the U.S. government or the English or whoever. Possibly, those people were enslaved or incorporated into some other communities. But that's my guess. I really don't have any information about anything like that.
Oh, okay. Certainly understandable given the amount of effort put into writing history books and erasing what was once here, including the people. So certainly, it's certainly understandable.
Well, and this is the thing. I mean, if for those people who, for any of those folks who say, well, all people from Africa were, people who had no, how do I want to say it, military power or civilization, whatever civilization means. I mean, after all, people from Africa went to Spain, I believe Portugal, some of those areas there, and had a presence there for hundreds of years. And, and so to me, I don't see that it would be shocking if there were some persons of African descent who, came, during the days of Leif Erikson or before, and, as I said, and did some trading with people here. As I said, on what's now the East Coast of the United States. Why not? It's certainly by the 15th, 16th century, the whites of Western Europe, the military power, the weaponry was more advanced than people in a lot of other societies. This didn't mean that they were better people, but it just means that as when, I think it was Cortez, invaded the Aztec nation and kidnapped their king and murdered him. The people there, they didn't have superior weapons. That didn't mean that they were bad people. And I'll say another thing for anybody who talks about people from Africa being uncivilized, things that I have my understanding. For instance, say in places like Nigeria, they didn't have chattel slavery that was based on race or color. If my understanding is, like, for instance, you took a man, and they had a lot of Muslims there, and if he had a slave, he had the legal right to marry his slave, even if he didn't. His children were not, they were born free. They were not owned by their brothers or sisters or their father. You didn't have, people, you had families. Whereas, with the Europeans, when they came to, what's now the United States, they would rather make money off of their children or their grandchildren. To me, that's uncivilized.
Absolutely agreed.
And then to carry those attitudes to the Indian nations, such as the Cherokee Nation or the Chickasaw Nation, to where those old styles of slavery, which was more based around being captives, of having captives again, eventually incorporating them into the tribe, having a race-based slavery, a permanent slave caste. That was something that was entirely new for, these Indian societies here. But that was brought by ambitious white men who came into these Indian nations who could gain citizenship by marrying the women there, and a lot of them became wealthy traders, fleecing in the Indian people, out of goods, But at any rate, as I said, these attitudes were brought in there, and again, even some of these traders, some of them, they also had white families other places, and maybe they saw their Indian wives as just a concubine. A lot of things, a lot of books that really haven't even been written.
Yes, ma'am. Definitely. Sorry, my line was muted again. I guess I'm trying to think. I guess the Trail of Tears. I guess if you could go into that. I know you said that there aren't many depictions of so-called Afro-Indians accompanying the Cherokees on the Trail of Tears. Is there any, good resources or good books that you would suggest about how so-called red people and so-called black people were mistreated during that time period?
Well, I know Dr. Dan Littlefield has written some books about the freedmen in the different tribes, Cherokee Nation, Chickasaw Nation, Creek Nation. Then there's other people who have written some older books. I think Angie DeBow, I think she's written one or two books. There are several books out there that are named The Trail of Tears, but none of those books really mention anything about blacks, people on the Trail of Tears. But one thing, when Congress paid out money for members of tribes for losses for cattle or slaves or things like this, these did become part of the government records of both the tribe and the U.S. government. And so, there are books and microfiche and different things like that talk about, wealthy slave owners such as Lewis Ross or people like that who received money, for slaves who died. Because they could give an accounting to the U.S. government that they lost so many horses or cattle or hogs or slaves. But, unfortunately, because of the lack of capital that black people have, including freedmen, to make documentaries and things, there's never been a story that was made of some blacks on the Trail of Tears, say of a slave family who lost, say, the husband or the wife, or the baby drowned or something like that. Hopefully one day these kind of stories will be told. I think about Steven Spielberg, who I saw him on TV one time, and he said one of the reasons that he wanted to be a rich man was he wanted to be able to make documentaries and tell stories of Jewish people who suffered, and like with Schindler's List, that's what he did. He was able to tell a story that maybe somebody else would not have thought was profitable to make. But and unfortunately, until black people, have the kind of capital and are willing to expend it on projects that in order to save history or tell history, a lot of stories aren't going to be told. And again,
Sure.
a lot of blacks don't have opportunities, don't have that access to capital, but some who do, are not necessarily making the best use of their money while they have it. And I'm thinking about some of the people in the athletic and the entertainment, world, because it's very alarming to me when, I read stories about athletes that are broke or almost broke, a few years after, they've retired or gotten hurt, or people who are, or athletes or entertainers, or more athletes really, trying to make money or come back into the sports world when they're really too old to do it. But again, black people, unlike, a lot of white people, we don't have hereditary wealth, trust funds, and things like this. A lot of black people who are middle class or upper class or relatively wealthy, they're the first generation that has had this kind of money. It's not inherited money.
Yes, ma'am, definitely. And I also like the observation about the black people that do have money tend to squander it in non-constructive manners. I think that black people collectively have to get better in the area of economics, how you use your time, energy, and money that white people give you. I guess my last question would be some of the, after the Seminole Wars and after the Trail of Tears, some of the so-called 5 civilized tribes were left back east. Are you aware of any relations between black and non-black so-called Native Americans back on the East Coast of the 5 civilized tribes, and do the dynamics of those relationships?
Well, not a lot. The 5 tribes, of course, were moved to Oklahoma, but there were, small remnants of those people who never moved. They may have hid out in the mountains or whatever. I know, for instance, there's an Eastern Cherokee band that's based out of North Carolina, but those are not people really who came to what's now Oklahoma and then moved back. They're really people who stayed. But, there are some blacks, there are a few blacks who are members of that tribe, and then there is the Mississippi Choctaw tribe, a few Choctaws who stayed in Mississippi, were able to get federal recognition, maybe 40 years ago, 50 years ago. So as I said, you have a few smaller tribes that remain there, but you don't have a lot of people of African ancestry or clearly discernible African ancestry, I'll say. And for one thing, some tribes that have sought federal recognition, as I was saying before, when you have a relatively large number of people in there that clearly have African descent, historically the federal government was less likely to say, well, this is a historic Indian community, and go ahead and add them to the list of federally recognized tribes or members of Congress. If some people who clearly, if a group of people who clearly have African descent, were to approach some senators and congressmen in their state, and the majority of those people look to have African ancestry, the attitude will be, well, this is just some black people playing Indian. And so some of the tribes, in order to make it easier to get federal recognition, have, they just, threw the blacks off the rolls. And consequently, some of the tribes, a lot of the tribes who have gotten federal recognition in more modern times, their cousins who are more Negro-looking have been booted off.
Wow.
I think I've noticed that with the I think the Lumbee tribe, I believe, is still fighting for federal recognition. If I'm
yes,
correct.
I have not personally met any Lumbee people. I've talked to one or two on the phone or on Facebook or something. But my understanding is one of their difficulties that they've had is that those senators and the like in their states and even in some of the other states have taken the attitude there's too many blacks in the tribe, but the Lumbees have not been willing to throw people out of their tribe in order to get federal recognition for the others. They've kept their tribe together, and I admire them for that. But as I said, if they were a tribe where 95% of the people were white, completely white-looking, I think they would have gotten their federal recognition a long time ago.
Absolutely. I actually have I've discussed some matters with so-called Lumbee Indians. I actually know a family that is pretty close to me that are Lumbee. I haven't discussed with them, but I know of other Lumbee Indians who have discussed similar things with me.
Well, it's really true, and the people working for the Department of Interior, including this Bureau of Acknowledgement, which looks at, which makes these determinations of whether a state-recognized tribe should be federally recognized. There are two ways to become federally recognized. If you are a Indian band or group, whatever, and one of them is to get Congress to approve your federal recognition, which has become more and more difficult because you have your other tribes out there that have casinos or economic enterprises, and they don't want more tribes, because they figure, they're going to take some of my customers for my casino or whatever, so then they hire lobbyists to go to Congress and say, well, they're not real Indians. So you have that. And then the other way is through the Bureau of Indian Affairs process. And there is what is called the Bureau of Acknowledgement that does an extensive historical and genealogy analysis on, say, this Indian group. And but there are no people, or almost no people of African descent who are working for the Department of Interior. So, as I said, the people who are running, that department, as a matter of fact, my understanding is the fellow that runs the Bureau of Acknowledgement is a Cherokee tribal member, a very Caucasian-looking person, and I personally don't know him. I have never talked to him, but I have been told by others that he has a very difficult time seeing people who have African descent is Indians or feeling they should be members of a federally recognized tribe. Again, this is just what I have been told. I've never had a conversation with this person. So, as I said, there's just a lot of obstacles, and a lot of books have not even been written.
Definitely. We are at the close of the program. So generous with your time. I don't know if we want to loop back around to the phone lines real quick and see if anybody else had a question.
Sure, we can do that. 7012, did you have any questions for our guest? Are you still listening?
No questions, but thanks again. Very informative views, and appreciate the forum.
Thank you. Caller at 7737, your line is open. Did you have any questions or comments for our guest?
Well, I would just like to thank the guest for her candidness. I appreciate your input. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, ma'am. I'm glad to have an opportunity to talk about racism and apartheid in the 21st century.
Thank you for calling in 7737. And I would certainly just like to thank you for coming on and talking about racism and so-called apartheid in the 21st century right now, and how again white people, the problem, this problem essentially is white people. And I guess last question before you go, what I guess I would ask. What role do you observe that does sex with white people, essentially miscegenation, people who claim that they're Native American now, weren't even 100 years ago, and just the I guess the so-called complexion of Native Americans now. Do you see that I guess the numbers, the demographics of the people of various tribes are becoming whiter and whiter, and do you see that this incident, the expulsion from the Cherokee Nation, as a symptom of groups of Native Americans becoming whiter and whiter?
Well, I believe that's definitely so. And Dr. Saoirse Sturm, who is an anthropology professor, used to be at the University of Oklahoma. I believe she's moved to Texas now. She wrote a book called Blood Politics in the Cherokee Nation. That as the tribe, for instance, has become whiter and whiter, and more white-oriented, as time has went on. And I see that situation, especially in the 5 tribes. There are other tribes that have, had huge amounts of intermarriage, or sometimes people not being married, with children. And as I said, and as this continues on, as I said, and you have more and more people living lives of white privilege, people who only think of themselves, well, I'm an Indian, when they get some kind of a benefit, if they, they're going to go down there and try to get a contract as an Indian contractor, but I don't see that that's going to change. Because again, you have a society where people of African descent are still on the bottom economically, socially, in every other way. And because the tribal leaderships, they have access to some money, they are able to put some distance between themselves and their Negro relatives. That's to some degree. Certainly, you have some, but I also, you have some Indian people who, if would have no problem if their son or daughter married a white person. But if they were to marry a black person, even a black person who is clearly mixed with Indian ancestry, maybe is a citizen by blood of that tribe, whatever, some people would disown their son or daughter. As I said, you have some real racism, and as I said, it's not really, it sort of comes out with this Cherokee Nation business and these other tribes who kicked out black people, like your Creek Nation. But it's not openly talked about, and I think that it needs to be.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ms. Vann, for your generosity. I can't thank you enough. I've learned a lot I'm sure everybody else on the call learned a lot. I'm sure Vic learned a lot. Vic.
Absolutely. Tons of information.
Well, I have enjoyed being on this program, and I hope that people will visit our website, www.freedmen5tribes.com, and I'm also on Facebook under my own name, Marilyn Vann.
Yes, ma'am. I will send you a friend request immediately. And check my email with the debate between Dr. Welsing and Dr. Shockley. I think you'll enjoy that.
I am looking forward to looking at that and seeing how that racist was really put to shame.
Definitely. Well, again, thank you for your generosity, and we will be following you guys' case, and take care.
Well, thank you very much, and as we say in Cherokee, thank you, Watto.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Good night.
Good night. Mm-hmm.
Good night. Reckless 2.0. That was Ms Marilyn Vann, president of the Freedmen Association. That website again, D-Train?
The website is www.freedmen, FREEDMEN, 5, tribes.com. That's Freedmen5tribes.com. Say that 5 times fast.
Then number 5. Then number 5. I strongly suspect that was a very, very constructive dialogue.
Yes, sir. And she was a lot less confused. A lot of victims.
Certainly less than much less confused than I expected.
Yeah, definitely. We're still on the plantation, but I am happy with tonight's program. I think this reveals a ton, and I think again it still reiterates the problem is white people, not Cherokees or whatever white people want to call themselves. The problem is the people who classify themselves as white, who practice racism.
Absolutely, it's boldly. I certainly think this dialogue emboldens the issue. The issue that the problem is white people. Essentially, really making racial classifications, or at least, or even down to the microscopic level of making tribal classifications. of a so-called tribe that originally did not have white people. So even that has been infiltrated by racist man and racist woman.
And that sex thing, that's how they infiltrated.
Oh yes. If you come out looking like a white person, you are a white person, and the problem is white people. So therefore, they're going to practice racism, white supremacy, and they're certainly doing so, and certainly in that in that sector with tribalism, even down to that level, having white people infiltrate. Of course, they get money off of it because you have to make some money if you're going to be mistreating niggers. So it's very, very interesting.
Very racist.
Oh,
very
yes,
racist.
very, very racist.
Despicable, trashy, trifling behavior from white people. I mean, you just can't be surprised by this behavior anymore.
Ooh. And again, the isolation of there's using the buffer class, using a buffer class. There's white people, then there's the non-white people, and then of those non-white people, there are black people, and these are the people who are going to be the most mistreated. So even within the dynamic of the Cherokee Nation, this certainly plays out.
Definitely. And, it just reminds you, it's like a microcosm of like Central America, South America, so-called Latin America, where you see this thing go on a larger scale all the time. So very, very, very constructive, I suspect, conversation.
Absolutely. She certainly had a wealth of information. I thought it was very, very interesting when I asked her about distancing, yourself from your black classification by saying, "Oh, well, I'm part Indian," and certainly that has to do with having physical recessive traits, but just the fact that she said that she essentially said that blackness is a classification, as not all black people have the same immediate or recent genetic background, and or even similar ones. In that, she said President Obama. She said, that is a black person. Interesting. She didn't say he's mixed, he's biracial, he's multicultural. All of that. But she just said this is a black person, and recognized that even she said it is a legal term, which I would just say that it's a classification distributed by white people for explicit mistreatment.
Definitely. Man, I'm in a great mood. Not hearing mistreatment of others, just that wealth of information. I think is more weapons in my arsenal. To understand racism. I am very enthused by this program.
Absolutely. Very, very constructive information, I suspect. We'll actually open some of the phone lines. 7012, your line is open. What was your take on Ms. Marilyn Vann? Your line is open.
Oh, apologies, Vic. I found the information very constructive. She said a lot of things that I wasn't particularly, privy to or aware of in the context of the so-called, Native American people. I feel you, D, as far as just being happy with the program, not being, she not being as, confused as a lot of other non-white people are. So that's why I just really, I sat back and took it in. I thought it was a very constructive program. And I apologize for missing the one yesterday. I got home late, and as soon as I got home, I realized, I didn't check my email all day. I was like, I bet they had their show today with the German guy and stuff. But that was also good.
For sure. We'll be on the grind for the next few weeks, so.
Yeah, rolling up the sleeves. I just find it like I was mentioned earlier. I find it interesting that just with the headlines and with it just saying the Cherokee Nation expels the descendants of slaves, and many just having, and this is on the Huffington Post as a headline, and I just think that it's just very interesting that they're making it look like they aren't saying that these are white Cherokee Indians, but these are just saying Cherokee Indians, which many people would say they're non-white. There's many white people I've heard saying that they are. Well, technically, I'm not white because I have a Cherokee great grandmother or grandparent. So I just think it was just very interesting.
It's very interesting how white people seem to, again, always. It's like the on the Cal's episode with the victim from Trinidad. They always work behind the scenes and try to make it look like it's other non-white people that are the problem. I'm going to read this, just read a snippet from this this article on Racism Daily. Again, where white people are distancing themselves. Again, this time it is not proxying themselves as Native Americans, but proxying themselves as I believe the term they used. This article is about so-called hate crimes. Apparently, the victims of racist white supremacist violence in this country, cross-racial violence, are the biggest victims are so-called Native Americans at the hands of. In this article, I believe it says non-Indians. Very, very interesting. Here it is. The study found that American Indians are more likely than any other race to experience violence at hands of someone of a different race, with 70% of violent attacks committed by non-Indians. Very interesting. I wasn't, I didn't know that, that, black people and Mexicans hung out in rural Nevada and mistreated so-called Native Americans. Very interesting. They're always working behind the scenes, us, the man behind the curtain. They never want to take responsibility for their terroristic actions. They just want to blame. They want to blame a nigga. They want to blame, they want to blame red people. They want to blame brown people. They want to blame black people. Anybody but them. Anybody but, a white racist white supremacist.
I certainly see a parallel with that and the Buffalo Soldiers, which is actually on the
it's on the website.
It's on the website, yes.
Bring it up. Yeah,
it's on the Freedmen 5tribes.com.
This page, right?
Yeah, on the myths page, talking about how the Buffalo Soldiers, black soldiers, were used to oppress the citizens of the Five Nations. And I just see it again as again, it's white people saying, "Oh, look at these black people oppressing," and there was slavery going on, and it's just saying, this is, look at these black people who are oppressing these poor Native Americans being ambushed by these beasts, and they're just oppressing them, but they don't have the power to oppress them because
they're in the white man's army, like.
Oh, exactly. They're in the white man's army. There is still slavery, and it's just essentially, blaming 1-800 blame a nigger again. It's just hiding behind a non-white person.
President Obama.
Yes, President Obama. Exactly. That's what I was alluding to. Certainly, President Obama just hiding behind a non-white person, and doing your dirt and then being like, oh, it was the nigger who did it. It wouldn't it was you. So it's just very tacky and very, very trashy behavior, common behavior, racist man and racist woman.
I did forget to ask that question. It would have been interesting to hear her response, but yeah, I mean, that's just trifling. And I've actually heard this before I come to this website, where, I've even heard, black people talking about this, how, black people had mistreated Native Americans and they were a part of Manifest Destiny, and get out of here, like.
And seeing that as a parallel with the Cat Williams situation, as mentioned earlier. Just look at these. Again, look at this ignorant nigger who's on stage oppressing another non-white person, even though technically it wasn't a racial conversation, and even though some of the things were very uncodified and just outright incorrect. People are also forgetting that Cat Williams is a comedian. He's just a comedian. He stands on stage with a microphone and he tells jokes, and people are looking at him for making political seriously. So
and what they don't tell is that in the comments, most of the people that support Cat Williams' statements are white people.
Oh yes. Which is very, very interesting. It was certainly some victimized comments, lots of white identification, I suspect, with chanting USA and things of that nature. So I can certainly see how white people would come behind Cat Williams. Who knows? Within the next year, he could have his own show on cable because of that. But who knows?
Good job. Way to inadvertently promote more confusion.
Hey, you get
slaves fighting at the bottom of the slave ship.
Hey, you get Scooby snacks for mistreating other non-white people and really just doing what racist man and racist woman ask of you.
Definitely. Did you did we set up a date for the gentleman, so-called Mexican gentleman that was going to come on the program and talk about Cat Williams?
Oh no, we have not. Mr. Luis Rodriguez. I emailed him today just to follow up, so hopefully he'll get back to me soon.
Okay, for sure. And I'll make sure you ask the Hispanic Fanatic. We're supposed to have him on the program next Friday. I'm not certain if he's a Mexican. I'm not even really certain if he's a white person or not. I suspect he's non-white. I've looked at some of his pictures, but we'll be sure to ask him. But I'm not sure of his lineage. But maybe he would have some comments on the Cat Williams situation as well.
Should be interesting. Now, I did see, I still did, like I said, we've talked about before the program, I still do have my views that, it's, attempting to, I partially have my views that it's attempting to slightly make yourself unique and say, oh well, I'm a part of this, and this is significant, when the real problem is white people. And you're attempting to classify yourself, and tribalism it certainly is has certainly lots of elements of the system of white supremacy and classifying yourself as something, and I certainly see that see the incorrect nature of that, but I do see there are hard financial benefits that are gained from that, and if you want to hold on to some type of identification that's not mistreating someone, I do see that as I don't see anything super non-constructive about that, because it isn't a system of Cherokee supremacy. It's just I'm identifying myself, and that certainly, I certainly learned that from the conversation from Ms. Vaughn, because she was still saying, I'm identifying myself as that, but I'm still a black person racially. So I do certainly think see the relevance of her saying that black is a racial, quote unquote, racial classification, and being a Cherokee and being a any other type of classification that isn't based on color, which white supremacy is based on, then I do see that as significant.
Oh, for sure. I've noticed that with other black people that aren't, I guess, quote unquote, cotton pickers, as well. Afro-Caribbeans, Negro Saxons, Africa.
Old West Indian Negroes.
And I mean, to be quite honest, I've even had some envy for, I guess, black people who at least have some sort of non quote unquote American cultural identity. And yeah, I think it just does kind of make you a special nigger, more than just a regular cotton picker. And it's nothing incorrect about it. I'm not trying to insinuate that there is. I think there are cultural differences, but I think that's a lot of time what I've kind of envied. I felt like as a black person, just cotton picking nigger from the United States, that you really don't have any type of cultural identity. So, I mean, in short, I'm saying that it's not, it's not, in my opinion, incorrect for, people to classify themselves tribally or nationally or regionally, as long as you're not mistreating anybody. And, we still exist under a system of white supremacy. So whatever, you're classifying yourself as, it's probably not going to stick when white people come around and, mess things up for you.
Agreed.
I certainly agree. I certainly just see, just that level of classification, just a bit, I would say juvenile. Just, when it reminds me of when you're a kid and you're like, all right, we're gonna, be in this club together, and no girls allowed, and we're doing this, and like we're children, and I think that a step towards being universal is transcending that.
Oh, absolutely.
Even to that level. So, but we certainly have before we can even get to that level of thinking or that level of action. We certainly have to solve this problem.
Oh, totally. I think we can worry about these these non-unjust forms of classification after we get rid of the unjust method of classification, which is mistreating people based on skin color and features associated with it.
It also made me think of the just the isolation of black people as the double whammy group. I just feel that
I see that too, and I guess when you say black people here, it seems to be kind of complex. Like she was mentioning how the dark-skinned, full-blooded, so-called Cherokees would be called niggers by other other Cherokees, the white ones, and I've read a lot of news articles about how so-called Native Americans, Apaches, and Comanches and Sioux are called niggers or prairie niggers, or then you just have people who are classified as black who are just stepped on all the time. So yeah, it just always seems that the darkest people get that double whammy, and in the absence of helix-haired people, the next darkest group always catches the most hell.
Agreed. I'm sorry I got cut off before. I was going to say that it makes me think of it does make me see Cree's point about non-black people being white to them. Being white to black people. They're just non-black people because of our severe isolation and severe mistreatment in comparison that even other non-black, non-white people will concede.
Yeah, I have no qualms with that. No qualms with that.
Yeah, I would agree. Even black people are pretty much programmed to be anti-black. So.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I've even heard so-called black people from this area of the world say, degrading things about so-called Africans. I hear it all the time. So.
Same here.
Actually, G-Train and I were discussing yesterday about the hypothetical question of the instant removal of white people, tomorrow, and what would be the results. And I believe D-Train, you said that, and I guess we agreed that or at least I know I said that the people that are left. Because I remember that there was a quote from the Negro Saxon saying that, well, even if white people are removed tomorrow, there's still going to be the attitudes and cultural norms and the structures left by white people, and and there will still be white supremacy. And D-Train added that even the lighter non-white people will be able to practice white supremacy because of this. And, I've come to the conclusion that logically means that you have not eliminated white people, because then if you've gotten rid of all white people that are alive today, tomorrow, the people that are left that are the lightest, and there is still the so-called, still the structure of white supremacy, then those white people are white people.
Yeah, I believe I agreed with you that, these people would just step up and become the new white people. I think our disagreement was that you said, what was our disagreement actually? I don't know
if there was really
I think it's the chicken or the egg type of thing. It's,
Was there a disagreement first, and we came to, I think it was a disagreement at first, and they were like, oh, we're saying the same shit. So it was.
Yeah, I think what we were, we were quibbling over what came first, the chicken or the egg. Like, if you get rid of the structure of white supremacy, that you had to cleanse people's minds first.
Oh, absolutely.
Do you have to cleanse people's minds before white people take that rocket ship and go wherever, or
well,
okay. Or do when white people leave, are people's minds cleansed? Well, so it's kind of a. Oh, go ahead.
What do you mean by cleanse? Just to clarify.
Just to get rid of all of that, white supremacist gobbledygook, anti-blackness, just to get rid of that whole thought pattern, the whole culture. I think that black people, non-white people, white people have been conditioned to follow.
Well, that is a part of getting rid of white people. That's it isn't just the bodies, the physical beings and minds of white people. It's the influence of it's the influence that in structures that they've created. So everything would have to be corrected for white people, the concept of white people and whiteness to be truly eliminated and alleviated, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, if they were gone, so to speak, we would be left with like you said, their institutions, their industry. Well, that based off of their industry, which is based off of their thinking, it basically destroys the world. I mean, pollution, just famine, just on a global perspective, all around the world. I don't think we could just be left to correct that in the collective mind state we're in right now, without not solving the problem, without causing more problems. So.
Agreed.
But I would say, I think for a lot of it, them going away would, I guess, put us in that, I can't come up with an exact percentage, but I mean, I'm pretty sure some of us would, go back, I guess, to a more pure, original, if there's ever such a thing, state of mind. And the other ones, the victims who are just too infatuated with white people, I don't think they would be able to make it without them.
I agree. I also see that also makes me think of the glaring flaw that I see is that they with that comment is what exactly the method of removal is very, very vague. If is it just waking up tomorrow and hey, what happened to all white people, or was it did something happen with a purpose, with an explanation of why white people are missing? And because I think that would be incorporated within changing people's perspective of white people and what whiteness is and what it does to this planet, instead of just, oh, they're gone, and we're still in the system,
Yeah, I see where you're going. Definitely, like, in other words, for them to be gone, it would definitely take a change in us, maybe to initiate that.
Mm-hmm.
Just contrasting that with just them just disappearing, I think that definitely would also play a role in, the hereafter. But it's really hard to speculate on either. In a perfect world, they would just disappear. And I mean, even nature. I just say nature pretty much dictates who it wants around and who it doesn't. So just based off of that, you know, but I think it would take some initiation, realistically, you know, in non-white people, specifically black people, the victims, to, you know, bring about that that change, that type of change. So.
Agreed. I don't know if we spoke about it on the last program, but D-Train, what were your thoughts on the complete thoughts on the Cat Williams incident and his comments?
Oh, I didn't think they had any. I don't think they were racial comments at all. I think, you know, again, the man behind the curtain going. You know, practicing racism. I don't believe that they were racial comments. I thought they were a bit, quote-unquote, xenophobic. You know, some person from one so-called country, you know, talking about another so-called country. And I also think they were really white identified. But again, you know, just I guess another, you know, blame a nigger type situation. You know, spewing all this rhetoric, you know, about, you know, what he said was so wrong. But, you know, white people say this every day, and it's okay, you know, so. And they say racist things about so-called Mexicans, and, you know, it's okay.
Yeah, I would have. Just a lot of confusion, as we said. Just as in speaking for America, you know, in the context of America being white, meaning white. Yeah, just slave mentality, basically. Definitely a nigger mentality. But it is capitalism.
I'm looking at some news articles. There's one called "Why Race Riots Are Inevitable." I'm actually getting this from the Race Ticker, Racism Daily. Just looking through some of these, see if, you know, anything I guess immediate pops out. African women say rebels rape them in Libya.
It's not funny. It's just that it's just so, you know, typical.
Expected. I mean,
it's just, you know, it just sounds so generic because it's just so common.
Wow.
What area of Africa is this? Does this take place?
This is happening in Libya right now with the so-called rebels.
Again?
Yep, again.
Let's see. Caller at 7737. Your line is open. Did you have any thoughts on Ms. Vann that from earlier? Seven 737. Your line is open, or are you just listening? Oh, guess they're just listening. But thank you for calling in and listening.
Did anybody hear the comments that Rick Perry, suspected white supremacist, said about that he wouldn't have any qualms with executing an innocent man, and he wouldn't have trouble sleeping about that? Anybody hear that comment that he made?
Negative.
I haven't heard it either. Do you mind repeating that again?
He said that he wouldn't have any qualms with executing an innocent man, that he wouldn't lose any sleep over it. You, as most people know, I think the majority of the people on death row in Texas are black males. So. Oh
well,
it's just a nigger. Funky.
Exactly. Just that comment, you can. That comment can never get old, and it can never, as long as there's a system of white supremacy, it can never get old, because I have no problems executing an innocent man. I have no problems murdering a slave, no problems raping an innocent female or male, and I have no problems practicing racism and white supremacy. None.
Wow. Speaking of Rick Perry, here's an article. Texas set to execute man because of his race. Sadly, executions in Texas are no rare occurrence. Rick Perry has presided over more executions than any governor in the modern history of execution. One impending execution, though, is making headlines because the man is set to be executed simply because he is a black man. No one doubts that Dwayne Edward Buck, interesting name, killed his girlfriend and her friend in July of '95. There's no reasonable doubt that he's a murderer. After his guilt was determined, though, the prosecution called a psychology expert during the sentencing phase who testified that because Buck is black, interesting word,
whoa,
he is more prone to violence and therefore should be executed. The jury then sentenced him to death. It doesn't take a constitutional scholar to see this problem. Obviously, any evidence like this should have been deemed inadmissible, and it likely influenced the jury. Then State Attorney General and current Republican U.S. Senator John Cornyn actually petitioned the U.S. Supreme Court to retry the case and 5 others in which experts had tested that non-white people were more likely to continue to commit crimes. United Press International quotes Cornyn as saying at the time, "It is inappropriate to allow race to be considered as a factor in our criminal justice system."
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This is interesting. I see at least, in this race ticker, I see at least 2 articles about race wars. One is titled America While Race Riots Are Inevitable, and the other is called The Quote-Unquote Left's Coming Race War.
Very, very interesting. But we all know the race war is going
on right now.
It's going on. It's already happening. It's happening. During wars, not people aren't fighting 24/7. People, are there are times there is downtime, and people do set their mind away from the war, and certainly our mind is away from the war that we're in. We're in the bunker, playing cards, not trying to deal with this issue. And many, of course, I'm not saying that we're running away from it, and we're, a lot of people are confused and are victimized because of racist man and racist woman. They are the people most to blame for or lack of diligence for solving this problem.
Definitely.
Have any of you seen the trailer for the film Colombiana? Or commercials for it?
I have not. That is the movie with the black female from the United Kingdom, correct?
Yes, Miss Zoe Saldana. And I was reading on the interesting blog, No More Race. They have such interesting things as Mixed People Mondays. But anyway, I just thought I was reading an article.
What?
Yes, they have Mixed People Mondays where they have just light-skinned black people or non-white people, pictures of them and, interviews with them. But it's...
Do white people run this blog?
I don't know. I see the word multicultural. It's looking extra suspicious. And it has topics, and it has hashtags that say biracial, ethnic, bigotry, interracial. They're just throwing terms. I just think when you see the hashtag topics jumbled together, assembled together, it really. Oh my goodness! One of them says mixed kids. You could just really see the power of words. And even when words are just put together, like they're in a bucket, when they're just, in a tight space, lots of fast words, where you can't even, you just see the impact of it even in written form. Ooh, multi-ethnic. Wow. Okay, but anyway, on NoMoreRace.com, there's essentially an article that says a unique and almost unannounced box office moment. And it says, very often there's talk about how Hollywood does not very often give blacks and other minorities, non-white people, a chance to shine in leading roles. And likewise, how mainstream America, white people, don't accept non-white people in leading roles in the movies they prefer. But when the contrary is true, we need to acknowledge it and applaud it. This past weekend at the box office, the number 1 and number 2 films were both films starring black women. Despite any criticisms that may be pointed at either film, what an interesting occurrence, and one that many did not take note of. The hit film The Help continued to lead the box office and stars several African American actresses in leading roles. And the film Colombiana opened up strongly at the number 2 spot with black Hispanic actress Zoe Saldana playing the hero and lead role. So yes, there is still progress to be made, but let's also note a unique weekend it was, and that maybe that it is a sign of change, that change is happening, even if it is ever so slowly happening. Black women leading the box office in 2 different films in very different types of roles. One as servant/maids, the other as an action hero, and both were well received. Hooray!
Are you serious? Are you fucking serious?
Dead ass serious.
I am looking at this blog right now, and I'm going to contact these people to come on this program like immediately.
I don't know. Just reading that gave me mixed race feelings.
They have Field Negro on their blog roll, interestingly.
Really?
Yes, they do.
Hey, someone's got to be in the field.
Maybe these non-white people. Perhaps. I don't know.
Perhaps confused non-white people? Well, we're all confused, but...
Ernest Harris. Let me click on his name. Is there a contact button somewhere? Colorblind. I just see a lot of buzzwords that bicultural. Like, what?
What is it? Tim Wise? No, I'm just kidding. It doesn't say that.
What are we talking about here? No more race clothing. We are the same. No more race.
Wow. Discrimination, integration, intermarry.
Just a lot of terms here, isn't it?
Like it just throws like when it says topics, it's just great. It's just very interesting.
I'm looking in the topics. I see bigotry. I see discrimination. I see interracial. I see multiracial, multicultural, post-racial, prejudice, race, and racist. But I do not see white supremacist anywhere in these topics. Yeah, I think we should contact these people.
Absolutely.
Because I would want to find out if these are white people or non-white people that run this blog.
It'll be very interesting to see.
And it says, and it's promoting sex between white people and non-white people. It says, like, the key is all of these mixed race children that are coming up these days. So it's kind of just promoting that type of confusion. Like that's going to solve the problem. And there's no evidence that mixed race... I mean, just look at Latin America. There you go. There's your case study of what so-called mixed race people do. You still have a system of white supremacy with white people on top.
Oh, those phenotypes. Just causing all sorts of problems.
Or is it white people causing problems, making big deals out of phenotypes?
Yes. Going to see that Colombiana tomorrow. With the black people.
Yeah.
So, but it should be very, very interesting to see how this film plays out. Certainly, I suspect there's going to be tons of cowbell, just raining cowbell. I mean, it just in the they couldn't even contain. It couldn't even contain itself. It was in the trailer.
So-called
Yes.
Colombiana. I'll probably end up going to see this film as well. I know that I've heard people who want to see this film.
They're also in this article. They're also championing the help. I just think that just championing something that is just that overt is extremely confusing. It's suspicious. I'm suspicious that either someone is extremely confused, or I'm suspicious that someone's practicing racism, white supremacy. It's very Gone with the Wind, Hattie McDaniel type of stuff. 3 minutes. Well, actually, 1.5 minutes. So, I guess before we go, was there any comments from the caller?
No, sir. Thank you, gentlemen, for the program again. Very constructive. And replace white supremacy with justice ASAP.
For sure.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, that's all I have to say. Replace racism with justice. Now.
Absolutely agreed. I just wanted to thank everybody for calling in and listening in, and of course, again, Ms. Marilyn Vann. Thank her for being so gracious with her time, and all I have to say is deal with the problem and solve it immediately. Reckless 2.0.